Well, it's exactly 8 from our studios on MDR Road. This is the news, but first, the headlines. The Vice President joins ECOWAS Ministers of Gender and Women Affairs to end gender-based violence. Deputies at the National Assembly call on government to improve the lives of all Gambians. 20 presidential candidates line up for Liberia's top job as President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf ends her final term in office. And Niger's army spokesman could not verify if attackers of the American troops knew the presence of the soldiers during the ambush. Well, these and other stories coming ahead in this half hour. I am Aissatou Keita, and thanks for joining us. The Vice President and Minister of Women's Affairs, Aja Fatoumata Jallow Tambajang, on Wednesday joined ECOWAS ministers in charge of Gender and Women's Affairs at a forum held in Niamey, Republic of Niger. The meeting seeks to end FGM and gender-based violence, as well as promote child protection. Khadijatu Jallow reports.
The ECOWAS Ministers of Gender and Women's Affairs Forum in Niamey seeks to adopt appropriate policy strategies to address challenges confronting socio-economic advancement of women and youth. The West African Bloc ECOWAS has called for concerted efforts at the national and regional level to meet envisaged goals. Mahawa Kaba-Wheeler of the AU Commission shared her opinion on the moving initiative looking to empower the most vulnerable groups in the sub-region.
The time for speeches is over. Words, we've had enough. We are now singing to the choir. This is now the time for action, and working together, we can bring life to the goals and objectives of Agenda 2063. Allow me to cite a few: the universal ratification and domestication of Agenda 2063, ensuring that women have equal access to decision-making, that we end child marriage and female genital mutilation. We also implement the African Charter on the Rights of the Child, but also make sure that women's economic empowerment becomes a reality.
The UNFPA representative and regional director for West and Central Africa reiterated her office's continuous commitment to partner with stakeholders in promoting the welfare of women and children.
For every woman who dies, 20 or more are injured or disabled. One of the most serious injuries of childbearing is obstetric fistula, caused by prolonged obstructed labor in the absence of timely and adequate medical care. Estimations indicate that West Africa has about 320,000 women and girls living with this condition, and that the incidence rate is approximately 12,500 new cases per year. It is clear that the burden continues to rise. Evidently, more needs to be done. The new UNFPA strategic plan for 2018 to 2021 builds on experiences and lessons learned in an effort to ensure that no one will be left behind.
The objectives of the forum includes poverty reduction, zero hunger, enhancing reproductive health, women and child rights, according to Madam Fatoumata Jallow, Commissioner for Social Affairs and Gender at the ECOWAS Commission. Madam Sow expressed appreciation to Niger's First Lady, President and government for successfully hosting the event, and urged participants to make best use of the opportunity to advance gender-based programs. The Prime Minister of Niger, Abadi Aboba, who delivered the opening speech, was upbeat about fruitful deliberation in their efforts to harness the potential of women and children in development. Ghana's Director of Gender, Dr. Comfort Asari, and her Gambian counterpart, Fantabai Seka, shared their views on the landmark initiative putting women and children on a strong development footing.
The Gambia is way ahead of most ECOWAS countries. We've already got our national strategic plan 2016-2020, and we're implementing a costed plan of action for child protection 2016 to 2018, and this is ECOWAS strategic framework will start 2018 when the Gambia will be having its mid-year review of its strategic plan. So we have a lot to share with ECOWAS.
The outcome of this meeting is expected to strengthen public policies centered on the socio-economic rights, especially enhancing programs that protect, empower and engage women and children in nation building. Khadijatu Jallow, reporting for GRTS News.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly members have called on the government to do more to improve Gambians' living standard. In a marathon debate at the legislative chambers on Friday, the lawmakers took turns to highlight the concerns and constraints of the people of their various constituencies. Abdullah C. Jr. reports.
One of the main issues that stood out in the discussions is a topic that has generated wide public debate for many years. Reports that some non-Gambians living near the border are voting in the country's national elections. Some deputies allege that they are non-citizens of the country in possession of Gambian voter cards and take part in the country's elections.
Whenever you come to elections, we encounter a lot of cross-border voting. And that is not constitutional. I raised these questions to the minister, hoping that there will be a response that will satisfy me, but it was not. I was not satisfied with the response. I thought that they're going to lay down a mechanism that will be able to qualify somebody to become a citizen, as enshrined in our constitution.
I'll take a typical example of my own constituency, Janjambure. Each time I talk about it, people are always saying it's one community constituency, but it is that complex. A lot of registered people in Janjambure Island that were not even born in the Gambia.
As the deliberations continued, the plights and what some legislators described as pitiful conditions of their people began to dominate. For most of the National Assembly members from the rural parts of the country, agriculture and health are the critical sectors that need urgent attention. But for those from the Greater Banjul area, rent is a problem.
In 1980, $50 for a room and a pound. Now you go to a landlord in Serekunda or in Talending or even Fajikunda, they will ask you $2,500, $3,000. What was the basis? Some of those houses were constructed when a bag of cement is only $6.50.
The National Assembly member for Janjambure also called for what he described as total overhaul of the Constitution. But the Justice Minister, who was on hand to respond to questions and concerns of deputies, said piecemeal amendments will continue until a new Constitution is enacted.
We want to ensure that whatever laws we're going to promulgate take into account the provisions of whatever new constitution we are going to make. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we basically put in the cart before the horse. We adopt a law, an electoral law, and then the constitution comes up with a provision that seems to be in conflict or inconsistent. But ideally we want to avoid that.
The National Assembly member for Serekunda said deputies are not obliged to obtain travel permits before leaving the country, stressing that travel permits are for civil servants and that National Assembly members are not civil servants.
The Constitution is very clear that National Assembly members cannot be categorized as civil servants requiring the permission of the executive to travel. That's the point. And I hope from now onwards, that is what is going to be respected. And of course, they agreed with me and I pass. I just wanted to raise that if that is the status quo, it should end right now.
Security strengthening, improvement of the country's road infrastructure, proper city planning, and fixing the country's drainage woes were among the issues highlighted by deputies as needing urgent government action. Abdullah C., GRTS.
Meanwhile, deputies on Thursday engaged the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ousseynou Dabo, and Finance Minister Amadou Sane in a question and answer session. Modou Badiane was following proceedings and reports. The two ministers responded to issues related to the state of Gambian migrants in Libya, Morocco, and Europe.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad, Ousseynou Dabo, was the first to answer questions from deputies. The main subject focused on the state of stranded Gambians in Europe, Libya, and Morocco. Parliamentarians, among them Sekuba Jajo of Busumbala and Bileji Tunkara of Kantora, also asked supplementary questions regarding the worrisome state of some Gambians living abroad and others forcefully or voluntarily returned home.
any reason of Gambians voluntarily want to come back to the Gambia? And also, the second part is, do you have any plan or any strategy for Gambians who are in Europe but they don't want to come back? They don't want to voluntarily come back.
The challenges that we have encountered is one of getting these young men and sometimes young women convinced. That is a challenge.
The Foreign Affairs Minister continued that efforts are in place to fully reintegrate returnees so that they can partake in the country's development.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to the above-mentioned goal, my ministry, the primary institution responsible for the welfare of Gambians abroad, is to engage in relevant international organizations and friendly countries in not only reversing the situation, but also ensuring that the welfare of Gambians, wherever they are, is adequately addressed wherever possible.
While Minister Dabo assured that his ministry is looking forward to working with the National Assembly Select Committee on Foreign Affairs, nominated parliamentarian Ndeyasin Seka suggested that more needs to be done in the reintegration process of returnees. Ilyasa parliamentarian Dembo KM Kamara questioned the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs Amadou Sani on the country's high cost of freight charges.
My understanding is that freight charges are prices, and like all prices, demand and supply play a critical role in determining the prices. These price differences can also be seen in other areas like airfares. We believe these are market determined, and as we live in a liberal economy, government has no control over this.
Lawmakers, including Halifa Saleh of Serekunda, also forwarded questions and remarks concerning the cost of imported and exported goods in the country.
The answer implies that demurrage is being charged to protect the shipping lines and the GPA, the terminal operator. But wouldn't the Honorable Minister also consider in the new dispensation that if this is not properly assessed, the likeliness of the new dispensation impacting on greater efficiency and protection of the actual importer would be sacrificed?
We're answering this, but I think the best person to answer these questions would have been the Minister of Works. But if I may say, demurrage charges are based on long-term established shipping practice and rules.
After mentioning that government is currently working on the expansion of the country's port for increased output, Minister Sani told Parliament that there are no short-term plans to build another port in the Gambia. Modu Bajan reporting for GRTS News.
Members of the multi-sectoral working group in the Gambia in the health sector were recently sensitized to the Tobacco Control Act. The forum organized by Raid the Gambia and the Minister of Health was designed to raise awareness on the health risk of tobacco use. Yero Jallo has the details.
This forum is to review the achievements and the challenges in implementing the Tobacco Act by this multi-sectoral working group. In his remarks, the Executive Director of Raid the Gambia, Sambujan Conte, said his organization and the country has achieved a lot in the fight against tobacco use.
Thank God, through your support, RAID came with the first civil society they assigned in these 10 countries. So the way we handle their resources, our reporting system, our fund control system, we came with the first NGO among the 10th. Then, on that juncture, we make appeal because our contract was almost ended. But I told them that to have a comprehensive Tobacco Control Act is not enough. Implementation is most critical. So we discussed with the Director General. He told us that the project is about to end, But because of your success story, we will give you additional fund if you have a capacity to implement it during 30 days.
Modunjai, Director of Health Promotion and Education, thanked WHO for their support. He called on all stakeholders, including the public, to be more proactive in curbing tobacco use.
So as he mentioned rightly, there are some of the activities will be implemented, and we really want all of us to be together in the implementation of the tobacco control activities in the country. And then this review will also help us to be at a level that we can gauge our performance. We also want to thank our other partners from CTCA, Center for Tobacco Control in Africa. They've also been very supportive in supporting this type of meetings, the multi-sector working group. And then I think, as Ahmad Baye mentioned earlier on, tobacco control is all about partnership.
The Gambia is classified #1 in the sub-region in achieving success in the field of tobacco control. Mamadou Gassama of WHO emphasized the need for more efforts in sustaining the gains made in controlling tobacco use.
The WHO is very much appreciative of the efforts of the Minister of Health in this direction. We have really, you can catalog a lot of achievements that the whole world is proud of, that really happen in this blessed country, the Gambia, as far as tobacco control is concerned. And we also have to really recognize that the world is looking at us. The world is trying to learn a lot from us. The Gambia is now a success story in terms of this multi-sectoral platform, when many countries are struggling to get this platform in place so that tobacco control can be tackled, multi-sectorally, not as an individual or as an institution alone. It's not possible.
It could be recalled that the Gambia's effort in the anti-tobacco campaign in the sub-region was recently recognized with 9 awards by the WHO. For GRTS News, this is Yero Jallo reporting.
Scores of soldiers Thursday participated in a cleansing exercise at the Westfield-Banjul Highway. The activity is meant to ensure safety for people plying the highway. HN Silva reports.
Confirm. Tell us what is going on over. This is all in line with the Gambia Armed Forces drive towards ensuring that the environment is clean and safe for Gambians and non-Gambians alike.
Wielding machetes to clear this bushy undergrowth from the Westfield-Banjul Road, GAF personnel are here to complement their security responsibilities by helping to maintain the environment.
So if you are to personify the state, it's like a human being. So how do you go about cleaning that body? It's through initiatives like this. So the Gambia Armed Security Services will not relent.
The men and women in uniform converge on site in the early hours of Thursday to do what they do best. Fast forward to a few hours later, the energetic soldiers cleared a large swathe of the area, making the widely used expressway safer and more visible to passers-by.
Like 2 days ago, if you were to come here, it's a bushy area. But right now, as we speak, you can see far down, almost over 200 meters. The road is clean and it's also clear for traffic.
Fatigue, as it is widely known in the military jargon, is routinely conducted in barracks as a key element of military discipline. Meanwhile, recent activities have seen the army offering additional services to the populace besides their normal functions, which is to safeguard peace and security.
It's not only to be carrying rifles and guns and being in the barracks. This is also part of our duty to also contribute towards national development.
This is the second cleansing exercise of its kind this year. But if Army PRO Sanyang's words are anything to go by, it will be a continuous process, making the military another custodian of the country's environment. Etienne Silva, GRTS News.
Well, that story by Etienne Silva takes us to our first break. Sports News is up next.
Youth aged between 15 and 35 years, willing to complete a 6 days intensive training? Do you want to grow your business and increase profitability? The Youth Empowerment Project, in collaboration with Empretech Gambia, will be organizing a series of entrepreneurship training workshops in the month of October and November 2017 throughout the Gambia. Application forms are now available at the Entrepreneurship Development Center, Bakau, Gaipa House, opposite Comium on Kairava Avenue, and at all regional governors' offices of West Coast Region, LRR, NBR, CRR, and URR.
While in sports, a select team of Gambian basketball players will compete in this year's 3-on-3 regional championship in Lome, Togo. The team is preparing ahead of the competition. GRTS Babakar Senghor watched them in action at the Independence Stadium basketball court, and he filed in this report.
The atmosphere inside the old basketball court was feverish, and at times a cauldron of noise. The games marked the start of the 3-on-3 championship. The Basketball Association is using the tournament to reconstruct a team ahead of a regional championship in Lome, Togo.
I want to play basketball. I want to be a professional. That's why every day we are training. Because in basketball, we believe that there will be a lot of things that will change, especially many things that are happening in the community.
The players showed the pool of talent available on the local scene, and association members are hopeful of preparing them for their next assignment.
As you have seen, the GBA has taken it upon itself from its own pocket to try to, as well as with help from a very few sponsors, to come together and organize this event, because time is really, really short. Yes, because from the time when we were given our notification, which is last week, to now, we only have 2 more weeks to make sure that we organize these events.
But that has been challenged by the poor conditions of the basketball lawn, which officials say is impeding the development of the game.
The problem is like about threefold. The first one is lack of commitment from the government, and whenever I come on TV, I think I've always complained that in order for basketball to develop in the country, we must get more commitment from the government, from the sport council, and also without an indoor basketball court. No matter how well we train here, we cannot move forward. And if you look, these players have not played like since before the beginning of the rains. And normally basketball should be playing every other day, and they've not been playing. So the fitness level is very low, and without an indoor basketball court, we cannot develop.
These players will now spend the next few weeks preparing for what is said to be a test of the progress they have made on the court. The GRTS Sport is Babakar Senghor.
We take another break now. The news continues in just a moment.
When I switch lanes, then them doors swing. Arm out the window, screaming money in the thing. Call it automatic bang, bang, bang. Call it automatic bang, bang, bang.
No, no, bunyungangu nyunyuita express. Swing hold the press, nyunyuyo.
Hello?
Come on, babe.
Yeah, babe. You've called me like several times. Are you okay?
Absolutely nothing's wrong. Nothing is wrong. I just love the music on your Q-tune.
You crazy.
QCell's Q-tune. Set the mood for your callers. Choose dial 127 and choose the song your callers will hear when they phone you. For more information, call 111. QCell. Sunyu Sim. Sunyu Boss. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back. Liberia is heading into its last weekend ahead of the elections. President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is stepping down, and at least 20 candidates are vying to replace her. Now, Liberia faces plenty of challenges, but for many voters, there is one overriding priority. CGTN's Robert Najila is in the capital, Monrovia, and filed in this report.
With more than a week before Liberians go to the polls, election fever has gripped the country, and the headlines are focused on what could go wrong on voting day. About 2.1 million Liberians will head to the polls on 10th October, almost half the population. And there's plenty at stake for everyone. It's been more than 14 years since a bloody civil war here. More than a decade of stability, if not much development. People are hoping for peace, whatever the outcome of the vote. One group is even holding daily fasts across the country to appeal for peace.
Right now we see into it that if we come back to the same spot and ask God to intervene in our election to sustain our peace, it will happen.
President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was Africa's first elected female leader when she took power in 2006. After 2 terms, she's barred by the Constitution from running again. And anyway, many say it's time for change.
We are praying for peaceful election, and we wish to get a candidate that will help us, because for our country, we are totally down. We are frustrated.
I would like to get a leader that will extend the education system. Most of the youth within Liberia, they are lacking some educational facility.
Everywhere you look in Monrovia, a reminder of the past. But with more than 50% of registered voters making their mark for the very first time, it's the future they're more concerned about. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Monrovia, Liberia.
Well, it's not clear if the attackers knew the Americans were present during the attack in southwestern Niger, according to the French Army spokesman. 2 members of the U.S. Army Special Forces were wounded during an ambush. The elite soldiers were part of a broader U.S. military role and assisting and advising local troops in their fight against terror groups. CGTN's Washington correspondent Kevin McLeese reports.
West Africa Command said the forces were with a joint U.S. and Nigerian patrol near the border with Mali when they came under intense fire. The Pentagon earlier describing Niger as an important partner for Washington. The White House press secretary giving a brief outline on the nature of the mission for American soldiers in that West African nation.
U.S. forces are in the country to provide training and security assistance to the local armed forces in their efforts to counter violent extremist organizations.
There's an estimated 800 U.S. forces on the ground in Niger, one of the U.S. military's bigger footprints on the continent. Terrorism expert Thomas Sanderson says the U.S. support for its allies and local forces is vital for efforts in the vast Sahel region.
It's important for us, for the United States and our partner countries such as France, to be in Africa's Sahel region in order to stop groups that are planning attacks against U.S. assets, U.S. partners, French partners, and also to interdict operations that are sending people to Libya, to Syria, to Iraq, and to Europe and the United States.
ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram and smaller extremist units are among the counter-terrorism challenges for the US, efforts bolstered by the construction of a $100 million US drone base in central Niger. But as the death of 3 Green Berets puts a spotlight on this part of the world, some experts fear it could soon be even more dangerous.
So these young Nigerians, these young Malians, Sudanese, may have had no, and likely had no military experience. They signed up for ISIS, they signed up for Al-Qaeda, they went to the Syrian, Libyan, and Iraqi battlefields, got that experience fighting against U.S. forces, Iranian forces, Hezbollah, Russians, and others, and are now, with all of that experience and confidence and street credibility, coming back to countries in the Sahel region and battling it out with local forces.
And the US role supporting those local forces in that fight only looks set to continue. Kevin McAleese, CGTN, Washington.
With that, we come to the end of the news, but before we take leave of you, a recap of the main stories. The Vice President has joined ECOWAS Ministers of Gender and Women Affairs to end gender-based violence. Deputies at the National Assembly has called on government to improve the lives of all Gambians. 20 presidential candidates have lined up for Liberia's top job as President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf ends her final term in office. And Niger's army spokesman has said that he could not verify if attackers of the American troops knew the presence of the soldiers during the ambush. Well, that was all in this edition of the news at 8. Thanks for the pleasure of your company, and do stay with GRTS.